Mrs. P said that Slendy was my godfather, I nearly had a heart attack. I didn't even know these people, and I was supposed to believe that they were for most purposes, my family. I never knew my father, but I'm starting to rethink his sanity for hanging out with people without faces. I mean, I could understand if it was the result of an accident, but by the way Mrs. P was acting, it was totally normal for him. She told me she wanted to give me something, and told me to wait in my new room. My legs were hanging over the edge of my bed, and I was swinging them nervously. What did she want to give me? I heard a soft knock on the door as she came back in, shutting the door behind her. She held a long box in her hand. I had a feeling I knew what it was. She sat on the bed next to me and handed me the box. "To welcome you to the family," she said, smiling. I opened the box carefully to see the most beautiful emerald necklace I had ever seen in my life. All the gems were shining like they had just come out of water. I laughed happily and smiled. "Did you steal this?" I teased, and Mrs. P laughed. "No, I've had it for a while. We don't know much about you except your name and the month you were born in, May. So I thought this would be perfect." "It is, thank you." I gave her a little hug and she smiled. "To warm up the people fast," she chuckled. "You definitely got that from your mother." "Why not my dad?" She suppressed a laugh. He wasn't a people person." I nodded and examined the necklace. "Want me to put it on for you?" I nod again and turn around, holding up my hair. She fastened the necklace around my neck, and I let my hair fall down. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. It looks great on me. "I'm glad you think so," Mrs. P beamed. "Ready to go downstairs and meet the others?" That stopped me short. "The others? You mean there are more than just you, Ben, and Slendy?" She nodded. "Yep, there's a whole family of us, though none of us are related. We even technically have a dog." I looked at her strangely. "What do you mean by technically?" She shrugged. "You'll see soon enough. Everyone's anxious to meet you, though, given who you are, but again, that's something Slendy can tell you. The others might bring it up, however." "What do you mean? What do I say if they bring it up?" "The truth. The fact you don't know who your dad is, and why he's important to them." I nodded, writing it down in my mind. I twirled once in front of the mirror. I've never been a vain person, but then again, I have never looked this good. Though my adoptive parents loved me, they always gave the better clothes to James. I frowned at the memory. "What is it?" "Nothing. Don't worry about it. Can I meet the others now?" She smiled at my response. "Of course! Now this probably won't come up, but if anyone asks for your kidneys, just say no." "But just say no. Trust me." I nodded, and Mrs. P gestured towards the door. I followed her, and we walked into the hall, which is empty of all people. "Everyone's downstairs," she informed me, and I nodded. We walked down the stairs into the living room full of people. Even though the room was small, the people in it made it look smaller. Everyone looks different, and not a single one looks normal. The closest I would have to ask is Miss P. Everyone turns when they reach the bottom stair, and my cheeks flush red from all the attention. Mrs. P, however, notices and shoots looks at everyone. "Give the girl a minute. She doesn't know a single one of you. Imagine how you must seem to her," she exclaimed, and looked over at me. In a low voice she asked, "You good?" I nod slowly. There's a boy about 17 sitting on the couch. He has a blue mask and spiky brown hair poking out from underneath it. He's also wearing a black hoodie. He looks kind of normal, well, except the mask. The mask has no eyes and instead has black eye sockets with no identification for mouth or nose. There's a boy about my age wearing green clothes and an elfin hat that I instantly recognize as Ben. When I look over, I see that I wasn't hallucinating earlier when I say he has dark black eyes where the white should be, and red where a normal color like blue should be. Other than that, he looks pretty normal, like he's wearing contacts or something. Then there are two boys in yellow and orange hoodies standing in the corner. One of them is wearing a mask, and the other has his hoodie up, shading his face in an abnormal darkness. What's with these people in masks? There's a very tall man whose head almost touches the ceiling who I recognize as Slendy. He is wearing a black and white suit with no kind of label whatsoever. Then there's a husky on the floor with a slight tint of reddish fur. When its head rises, however, it smiles. All of its teeth are human teeth, forcing him into a permanent smile. He wags his tail in a friendly way, so I decide he's not that all bad. I don't know what to say, so I end up standing there awkwardly, looking down at my feet, which suddenly look very interesting. Mrs. P nudges me in the side as if to say something, but I cannot. I wouldn't know what to say. Even if these are my father's friends, I know nothing about them. I don't know where to begin. To my relief, Ben breaks the silence and gives me a reassuring smile. Nice to see you're awake. You scared the crap out of me earlier. I smile back, starting to warm up to the strange boy. What were you doing at the lake anyway? I shrugged. The forest is my home away from home. I swear everyone starts to warm up to me after I speak. Oh, she can talk! The boy with the blue mask teases, and I blush from embarrassment. I hear the boy chuckle. We are all glad you're okay, dear, says Slendy, and I look up, surprised to hear him speak without a mouth. As if he can read my mind, he adds, I'm speaking telepathically. I nod. I'm a little shaken, but I'm all right. Ben smiles. He seems to be the only one here that shows, or has a face other than Mrs. P and I. So, who are you? I asked to no one in particular. I'm Ben, Ben says happily, grinning like a madman. Jack raises a hand. I'm Masky, he's Hoodie. The masked boy in the yellow says, and motions to the boy in the hoodie. I'm Slenderman, but you can call me Slendy. Everyone else does. And that smile on the floor, no pun intended. I nod. Nice to meet you guys, I say. Sally's upstairs taking a nap, Ben adds. She'll be down as soon as she wakes up. I nod and smile. Mrs. P told me that you guys knew my dad. Who was he? I said, ignoring Mrs. P's advice on not bringing it up. I really want to know who he is. Everyone grows quiet, the emotions ringing from sad to distant. Slendy speaks up. He was a good friend of ours, as Mrs. P has probably told you earlier. He used to live with us until he met your mother and moved away. His voice trails off, hinting that he'll tell the rest later. I nod, understanding. I wouldn't want to make these people unhappy. I see. This may sound weird, but do I look like him? This makes people lighten up a bit. Ben smiles happily. He was the least fazed by my earlier question. You definitely has his hair and skin, pale and jet black as always. I smile. But you have your mother's eyes and nose. I blushed a little bit. Did you guys know my mom, too? Not that well, Jack says. We met her a couple times. She seemed really nice, though, and she made Jeff happy. Jeff. Was that my dad's name? Jack nods. Jeff. I like the name. I wonder why he called me Adora. Your mom's name was Caitlin, Hoodie stutters from the corner of the room, finally speaking. There's a short pause before Ben breaks the silence again. So, do you like video games? He asks happily. Mrs. P rolls her eyes, but I smiled wickedly. Are you kidding me? I love video games. What's your favorite? I ask, leaving Mrs. P's side and sitting next to Ben, who is grinning like a madman again. Well, you and Ben are going to get along just fine, Jack teases, and I smile at him before turning back to Ben. Halo or Legend of Zelda? I smile, showing my teeth. I love Halo. I've practically memorized all the dialogue in the game, and I've beaten it on Legendary at least 10 times. Ben grins right back, his smile widening. Is the newest one good? I haven't had time to go into the human world and buy it. I look at him strangely. Aren't we in the human world? Ben's eyes widened, realizing what he just said. He bites his lip. Technically no, but then again, we aren't anywhere, Masky says before being elbowed in the ribs by Hoodie, who shoots him a look. What? What do you mean we aren't anywhere? I ask. I can feel the tension in my shoulders. Where am I? Child, please calm down. We can explain everything. Mrs. P looks at Slendy. No offense, but telling a girl to calm down will only make her more nervous, she says without sarcasm. She turns to me and walks over. Jack moves over to make room for her, and she sits next to me and takes my hand. I don't move it away. We have some pretty big things to tell you, but you have to promise me you'll keep your questions until the end, okay? I nod slowly. Ben is right. We aren't in the human world. We are in a place called the underworld where all the creepypastas live. And before you ask, no, we aren't in hell, Slendy begins, and I flinch at the swear word. Creepypastas are kind of like those things from horror movies. You know, like the masked serial killer? Jack raises his hand. That's me. Thank you, Jack, Slendy says. We all represent some kind of human nightmare. I'm the stalker, Ben is the cyber virus, kind of like a hacker or terrorist. Mackie and Hoodie represent the shadows since you cannot see their faces, and you don't want to know what they hold. Basically the element of not knowing. Sally, who you'll meet later, represents the little girl at the end of the hall with the flickering lights, like the girl from The Grudge or Alma from the Fear games. Mrs. P represents a witch since she can use magic and potions. Smile represents evil animals, the hellhound basically. Was my father a creepypasta? Slendy nods. He pauses. Madness. Madness, I repeat. He was crazy? I glance at Mrs. P, who offers a reassuring smile. I look over back at Slendy. He represented madness, but he himself was not mad. He was perfectly sane, Slendy assures. Barely, I hear Jack say under his breath, and Ben and Mrs. P shoot him a look. He looks down at the floor as if he was ashamed by his words. I think that Jack means is that he knows he wasn't mad, but it's something sometimes seemed like it. Ben offers, and I look over at him. Sometimes. What do you mean he represented madness? What did he do to represent madness? He made people go mad, whether it be from worry, stress, or just plain giving up. Like me, he wouldn't leave people alone, doing creepy things like always smiling and staring, until, well, you know, they killed themselves. I shuddered at Ben's words. Killed themselves? Is that what you guys do? I ask. I've been raised by my adoptive parents to resent murder, but these people seem nice enough. Is there something more to their actions? Mrs. P nods. Only a few of us do it directly. For example, the rake was like that. He was this demon with really long fingers that ended with razor-sharp claws. He represented aliens because basically he looked so unhuman. Who else did? I asked, not certain if I want the answer from the look on Mrs. P's face. Sometimes your father, but really only when he was forced to. He can't teleport like most of us, so he had to make do with the situation. I nodded slowly, taking it all in. So aren't you guys friends with the rake? I asked. Everyone seems to shudder. God, no! I hate that thing! Almost as much as I hate Jane. Ben starts, but is cut off with a sharp jab in the side by Jack, who shoots him a look. Who's Jane? Jack sighs, failing at keeping me from hearing her name. Well, every creepypasta has an opposite. Someone who does the exact opposite of them in practically everything they do. Though in some cases, they are more similar than anything. Masky and Hoodie are a good example of that. They are opposites of each other and get along just fine. Others, however, aren't as lucky, Slendy says, and looks down before looking up again. Jane was your father's opposite. And a bitch, Jack adds, and I imagine Slendy would roll his eyes if he had any. Thank you again, Jack, Slendy says, sounding a little annoyed by being interrupted. As I was saying, Jane was your father's opposite. Your father rarely killed directly, and she rarely didn't. Your father was somewhat social and made friends. Jane did not. Slendy started. Your father had a heart. Jane did not, Hoodie adds from the back of the room. She didn't even have a conscience. She just killed and killed. The only time someone she killed wasn't random was when she wanted revenge, Ben exclaims. That girl had absolutely no heart. At all. At first we thought, let her stay here. Maybe she'll be the good kind of opposite like Masky and Hoodie. We were so wrong. She hated your father most of all, because he was the original and she was made for the sole purpose of being his opposite. Slendy says. I turn to Masky and Hoodie. Who's the original between you two? I ask. They shrug. When two opposites are more similar than different, it's hard to tell the original, Masky started. From the copy, Hoodie finishes. We don't know who is here first, so we just go with it. I don't care about finding out who's who. Masky nodded. Me neither. I nod understandingly. I turn to Slendy again. I'm assuming creepypastas aren't human. He shook his head. Was my mom human? I asked. He nods. A human that somehow managed to find our world and come into it. I let this sink in. So I'm half human, half creepypasta? No one answers right away, and even then, Slendy only shrugs. Well, you would have to have some of both in you, I would assume, Jack says. But since you're also human, there's no telling what you represent. There has never been a human creepypasta mix before. You're the first, I sigh. I assume this is a problem somewhere, right? Everyone nods. The Shadow Council. They're the ones that make us and act as a sort of police for us. The first law is no having a relationship with a human, and well, I think it's pretty obvious that your father broke that rule, Slendy says. Why don't I live with my real parents? Did they make them give me up? He nods sadly. They were hoping you wouldn't be a creepypasta and a human, and sent you to an adoption agency. This voice saddens a little. As punishment for the breaking of a rule, your mother was killed. My breath hitches in my throat. The fact I was alive killed my mother. My dad must hate me, I said sadly. Mrs. P rubs my back comfortably. Actually, no, he doesn't hate you at all, Jack says happily. Not even a little bit. He loves you so much. Masky smiles. His mask doesn't cover his lips. Yet with the council after him, he had to leave you. Before he left, he named me your godfather, and made us swear that we would watch you. Of course, we all agreed immediately before he left. Slendy says in a voice that hints at him smiling. So you've been watching me this whole time? I say, slightly surprised at this. I haven't seen you guys once. They laugh. We're professionals, Ben jokes, and I roll my eyes at him and he smiles. We've made sure nothing seriously bad ever happened to you or your family, though sometimes I wish I could have punched your stupid stepbrother. That guy is an ass. Hoodie says, and you smile. Well, yeah, he's James, what can I say? He thinks he rules the world, basically, and demands everything. One time he asked my adoptive parents to get rid of me. I swear he got in so much trouble. My voice trails off and I laugh. He got what was coming to him, though. Mrs. P smiles. I'm glad to hear. But I'm even more grateful that it was the best swimmer in this place's turn to watch you. I turned to Ben. But I thought... He laughs, rolling his eyes. I am the best swimmer now. I can't say the same about back then. I return his laugh. Well, I say, turning back to Mrs. P, you're not the only one who's glad he was there. Sorry for freaking you out back there, I say, facing Ben again. Don't sweat it. I guess we all kind of look freaky at first glance. I smile. There's a loud knock at the door, and everyone looks at each other. Slendy? Ben asks nervously, looking at me, then at him. Take Adora upstairs, he says, and waits until me and Ben are halfway up the stairs before attempting to answer the door.